want to talk a little bit about credit cards. Obviously, like for me, back when I was in real estate, is I used credit cards or revolving debt. I think back at the time I had probably 50 grand in credit cards. Some of them were five and $10,000 limits on these particular cards, and I remember they each had checks. And so what was interesting is like when I was renovating a house or when I bought the house, I was able to write a check to myself and deposit that money into my bank. And then as long as it was paid off within 30 days, there were no advance fees or anything like that. Usually they do them like temporarily period of time. So I was able to use my revolving credit to buy some of the houses because I had a few $1,000s to my name at that particular time. And so all the money I used to buy the first couple of rental properties or I should say first couple of properties, foreclosure properties that I wrote about in my second book, Mastering Yourself, was borrowing money on my credit cards basically. And so I maxed that out, not because I was pissing the money away, but I was using the money for leverage to leverage debt. And so what I did is I borrowed money on these different credit cards, and then when I would get the bill at the end of the month, then I would just transfer it, do a balance transfer to another one because they said, hey, if you transfer a balance, we'll give you a low rate for 6 to 12 months. And so I was able to borrow the interest or the money for pretty cheaply. And that gave me working capital that I quite frankly didn't have access to. And it was just because I started out with one credit card, I think it was like 19 years old, and they gave me like a $500 limit. And I would use that credit card to buy gas or pay for other things. And every month I would pay it off. So if I charged $200 or $300 or $500, it get paid off every month. And then what you notice as the several months go by, they keep increasing your limit. And I did that over several years. So by the time I was 26, 27 years old, I went from starting out with one credit card at $500 for the limit to now I had like 6 or 8 credit cards. And I think I had $50,000, $60,000 total that I could borrow on them. And so I used that money to buy these different particular foreclosure properties. And so when I got into the mortgage side of things in business when I was in the real estate and mortgage industry, I had a guy that came in and spoke to all of my employees because we had people that would come to us and they were like right on the border of qualifying for a loan or qualifying for a much better rate. And so they taught us how to go through people's credit report. And what was interesting is if you have a credit card with a $10,000 limit and you got like $9,000 on that's charged to that particular credit card, and then you got 3 other credit cards that also have $10,000 limits, but you have $0 on it, your credit score will actually be lower because that one particular trade line or credit card is over 70% of its limit. And so what we would often do is we would help people tell them which balances need to be transferred to other cards so they get under that 70% window. And so because the way the whole credit bureaus, what they're designed to do is to predict the likelihood that you're going to miss a payment within the next 30, 60, 90 days. And so the higher the likelihood that you're going to miss a payment, and typically people who have maxed out their credit cards are much more likely to miss a payment than somebody that's under 70% of the balance. And so just by doing simple things like that, spreading your balances to get it underneath 70% or even 50% spread across all the different credit cards, you'll actually raise your credit score. And when you're applying for a loan, that could be the difference between a 0.5% or a full percentage rate in interest that you qualify for. And so simple things like that, we would work with our clients. And I mean, it would take several weeks. They would get things paid down and balances transferred. And then we would go and repull their credit with the new balances on there once they've been reported. And their score would go up. And now they would qualify for a better rate or qualify for a loan. Whereas before, we were going to have to turn them down.
Yeah, I know. Something to add to that is personally what I do. I didn't even know, I never knew that existed. But what I do is I use the rewards on cards to incentivize me to use different ones. So I have like 4 credit cards. I have Amazon one, gives you like 5% back on Amazon. So I only use that for Amazon. I have one for gas. I have one for groceries. It's all cash back. So one for my phone plan with like an insurance that if I drop my phone and break it, they'll cover it for free. There's a lot of perks to having credit cards. And my parents were always strict about teaching me about credit cards and the importance of credit. So I was lucky and I've learned about
If you want
all.
to borrow money.
Yes. Yeah, I'm 20 years old right now, and I know all my friends that don't have any credit cards. They're going to have zero credit when they intend to get a loan for a house in the future, and they're going to start out fresh, which I encourage everyone that's around my age to just get one. I mean, there's all the rewards to get sign-up bonuses. I had one card give me $200 just to sign up for it, and I wanted it anyways because of the rewards. But there's always, you have to be smart about it. You can't, you know, wait off your payments, pay near the end of the month, not pay in full because the rates are pretty high. Like some cards are around 25%. It's insane. So you have to be smart about it, pay on time, pay the bill in full every month, and never spend money you don't have. If you spend money you don't have, like treat it like cash. If you treat it like cash, you have no issues.
The other thing that was interesting that I learned from this guy that worked for the different credit bureaus, I think it was Experian he worked for, if I remember right. And what he was telling us was that the other thing that's important is that you got to use your credit. So if you've got 4 or 5 other credit cards that say they have a zero balance and you don't use them, another thing that goes into determining your score is borrowing money and paying it back. So with all of your credit cards, something that's really super important, because a lot of people think, hey, I got a zero balance and I'm not using it. Well, you should at least use it for a tank of gas or just buying 1 or 2 things a month and then pay it off every month because it shows that that particular trade line is active versus saying, hey, I'm only going to borrow money when I need it and therefore I only use the card when I'm borrowing money. Well, if you don't use it for 6 or 7 months versus somebody that's, putting a tank of gas in that card and charging it and then paying it off every month, the person that charges 1 tank of gas and pays it off every month, those particular trade lines are going to be more active. And as far as the algorithm goes, the credit score goes, it looks at the fact that you borrowed money that month and you just paid it back versus somebody that didn't use that credit card for 6, 8, 9, 12 months. So that's another thing that is one of those little tips about how your money that you have on credit cards and how often you use them is going to affect your credit score. And when you're borrowing a lot of money and you can increase your credit score by understanding how, because again, the whole purpose of the credit bureaus is to predict what the likelihood is that you're going to have a late payment within 30 days. And so if you're, like I said, if you've got a bunch of trade lines, maybe you want to buy some investment property someday, or you want to buy something that is going to create some kind of positive cash flow for you, you want to use it. It's just, the old adage, use it or lose it. And so it's the same thing with credit. So even if you're not maxing those cards out or using it, at least use it to buy 1 thing a month, pay it off every month, because that will help keep your score, your credit score, as high as possible. And always keep your balances on your cards below 70%. And if you've got, say, $50,000 of available credit, but you only got $10,000 in your credit cards, I would take that $10,000 and spread it across all of the different credit cards, because typically when you transfer balances, they give you a lower rate. And also, the lower your percentage of borrowed money versus what your actual limit is, the larger the distance is in that. So in other words, you never want to go above 70% of the trade line sitting there being maxed out. You get it under 50% or 20 or 30% on each trade line versus what its max balance is, you're going to have a better credit score. And if you're borrowing money for a house or some kind of investment, the amount of difference in that interest rate can really add up to hundreds and thousands of dollars on a monthly basis and what you can save. So it's pretty interesting.